This is now okay. Can you still hear me? All right. This is the CloudTest team. I'm Cory, Bocach, practice manager for CloudTest in the Americas. This is Ron Thompson, principal solution architect for CloudTest. We have a global team, 20 people, multiple locations: India, Costa Rica, many in the U.S. About 20 years experience across most of the team. 8 years they've all been together, and we've been doing this a long time. You need to hit the space bar. This isn't working. Hit the space bar. Again. 3 takeaways we want to have for this. The production level testing experience of the team itself. Everybody's been doing this a good 10, 15 years or more. Some of us have been doing it 20, 25 years. Everybody's been testing in production for a good 15 years. And just that experience alone makes it so you don't have a lot of things to worry about during the testing. We're not going to blow up your production environment. It's very controlled while we're executing. Global distribution and scalability. We have 67 locations throughout the world. We can bring up thousands of the servers in a short period of time, so we can exercise your environment from any number of locations in a quick transition. Dynamic control and adaptability. We have the ability to adjust everything on the fly during your testing, control the way everything is flowing. If we need to ramp down or ramp back up, you can control your different streams individually, control your different bandwidths individually, however you want the test to go. If you want to spike test at any given time, you can ramp up at 2 million users in 2 minutes if you need to. And all that is controlled and doesn't have to stop, start, make changes. It's all dynamic. I need spacebar. Again. So what's the cost if you have any issues with your streaming events? Obviously there's ad revenue, there's customer base, there's bad press, any type of bad negative issue that could happen with your streaming event can always affect you downstream. Space. Now we're going to talk about live, large sporting events. Give me spacebar one more time.
Maybe.
Spacebar one more time. Multiple things to consider during streaming events, obviously. Security, capacity, segment size, chaos situations, locations and peering agreements, and then load and stress testing, because you want to make sure everything's going to go off flawlessly. Now, Ron's going to tell us about testing a large sporting event that we did not too long ago.
So the first test. All right, here we go. For the first few months of being part of Akamai, we had a large sporting event which came up. It had some pretty serious issues the year before. It cost the company millions. It was a type of OTT device that was causing issues. It cost the company millions in ad revenue. But I'd like to paint some context in being in this industry for almost 25 years and running my first BBS on 300 baud modems. And for anyone who knows that is, this guy does. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by some of the best performance engineers in the world. For 25 years, I worked for Microsoft. I've been in this testing vertical, and I know this much. So it's very important in this space. And as Cory preluded to, we have a lot of engineers that have been in this vertical for a long time, and it really brings the gap to an extension to your team. So. If you heard Tom's remarks, we've really evolved to the edge even more and more, and in our testing as well. And prior to coming to Akamai, we've tested some of the biggest media events in the world at that point, what we thought, and that was actually very ignorant of us. We tested the Mars rover, we tested the Olympics, we tested some of the biggest e-commerce sites in the world. So, coming to Akamai, we're like, first few months we get a requirement that comes up. And that requirement was, hey, we have a large sporting event, as Cory mentioned, that's coming up, and it's a couple weeks away. And we have these issues, and we need to test it. We need to test it at such a high scale, it is 20x what we'd ever done before. And, everyone's eyes open up, and sure, yeah, we can do that. So we geek out for a while and think about how we're going to approach it and go off right away and start scripting this event. So it's Thursday. You know, we basically have a few day window to get ready for this, and we script this out. And CloudTest is a very generic platform, so we scripted out a Dash media player. We scripted out an HLS player at the most basic level, getting the manifest, getting the segments, and not doing anything fancy, randomly picking the bit rates, and just making sure we're exercising some logic and introducing the chaos scenario that caused the issue before, which was a byte range request that caused all their customers to pop out of their viewing experience with, and clearly millions of dollars, as I said. So we go off, we test the first event. Day one, we test it. We get to 5-10% of what we were targeting, and things are falling over. We start airing out all over the place. Not the platform itself, but the stream. And had we not done even the most basic level of testing, that event would have been disastrous. So we apply that fix. Day two comes. We scale up. We scale up to a terabyte or so of streaming. Introduce the chaos scenarios. Everything goes great. No more need to do any more testing unless we can really mimic a player. And today, we didn't have that knowledge. We didn't have that behavior in the clips that we have today. And that was basically, not only kick up and down through the streams, but backup streams, add injections, all these things that we had to, basically pull that behavior in so that when a user gets an error, when a user, doesn't get that segment in time, that we could mimic what it would be like and call out buffering scenarios and call out analytics that would allow us to show that there was problems. So yeah, again, day two, it's Saturday, we go off and yeah, we'll do this because, Cory and I are trying to break records after all. So we go off and script it in this behavior and get into day three. I think we hit close to 1.5 terabits per second on the streams at that point to the origin. Introduce the chaos scenarios at high load, and we're able to, stamp the event as being, it's going to be successful. And it did. It went off, without a hitch. So one thing I didn't mention in there is that after day one, it was, hey, there's another event that's coming up before this event, and it was still a record-breaking event for us. It was probably 5x, 10x what we'd ever done before, and so sure, we jump off and do that one. So these were both live sporting events, so they did go off great. They did not have the issues that they had before. They're a happy Akamai customer and continued on that journey. And let me see if there's anything else I want to call out.
No, we'll come to the space. All right, now we're going to talk about why is global distribution important. No slide. Peering agreements, what else do we need? Why do we need global distribution?
Well, global distribution is very important. As Tom mentioned, edge computing and sitting in the data centers is just not enough anymore, right? We have 67 worldwide locations, and it's about this much. As a lot of you might know, that peering agreements get saturated really fast. You start pulling hundreds of gigs from Amazon and hitting your site. It's not necessarily, going to mimic real world. So we're able to target and leverage, different methodologies now within Akamai that allow us to, stress even further. But these 67 locations and these arcs, as you see here, we've been able to test with just that the largest events in the world. But as Tom mentioned, with everything going to edge, we have to do more. We have to do more than we're doing today. We're constantly evolving the locations. We're constantly adding locations, and so that we can maximize all these peering agreements.
tell me why auto-adjusting bandwidth is important for your kick downs, your kick ups.
Sure. So, I mean, the HLS and dash specs require that a player, if it's not able to deliver, that it has the smarts in it to basically kick down. So we're coming in and from a synthetic aspect and mimicking that behavior. So we want it to be as close as possible to what that player is really doing. So we proxy the player to understand what it's doing and the behaviors that it's doing so that we can maximize what that experience is like. So in this case, you can see that we were able to kick down and kick up in the bandwidth streams and also the backup and primary streams without issue. So since CloudTest is a generic platform, again, these are workloads that are only as good as we are. So we are constantly evolving these players to the specs that are out there in the dash standards and the HLS standards. But as many of you might know, that everyone is homegrowning their own players these days, and the behaviors don't necessarily mimic what the real players would do based on the spec. So we have to often introduce different logic that aligns to their type of player.
Cool.
So that CloudTest allows us to, just
right.
instantly to mimic that behavior.
Dynamic and responsive adaptability. We talked about this before. Each one of these is a separate location. Within the different streams, you have the ability to adjust them on the fly. If you need to increase one location, adjust another location, ramp down because you're causing some issues in one region and not another. You have that ability here to do this throughout the test.
Yeah, I just want to add to this that, I mean, we often feel like DJs but this control, and this is the most basic level, allows us to not only test safely in production, it allows us to make real-time decisions, right? So everyone that hears about production level testing, they often cringe, as I did, being at Microsoft, and everything had to be protected, everything had to be done a certain way, and the methodology had to be sound. Well, production level testing is not done that way, and you need that dynamic control. And it's a must-have in our industry, and it's what really differentiates the platform in allowing us to do these events safely, whether it's a live sporting event, whether it's a VOD content, or whatever that site might be, or that test requirement might be. This allows us to do it. And not only that, as we mentioned, the locations themselves, you get into scenarios where AWS might not be able to provide in a certain region. Azure may not be able to provide, whatever. This allows us to back that off and bring the other distributions up to not cancel the test, right? Because that's very expensive when you have a lot of people on the phone, you're interacting, and hey, we need to back this off. We need to create this. We need to move this. And this allows us to have that control and that flexibility.
All right, now explain stream type agnostic for me.
So we are stream type agnostic in the sense that, as I said, we build the workloads. So we are only as good as the engineers that are building the workloads and those that we work with, regardless of what those look like. So stream type agnostic, I mean, HLS, dash, smooth, whatever it might be, we don't care. We're just going to mimic that behavior. If something can be proxied, it's incredibly easy. If it has to be manually built, we build it.
Yep. Cool. Next. You gotta hit it again. The bullet point. All right. The one thing you wanted to stress and you wanted to talk about was that you're very powerful within the Akamai CDN because what you have access to now, but also CDN agnostic. So.
Yeah. So I mean, we often get cases where we're part of Akamai now, so I mean, it's like, hey, do you test other CDNs? Absolutely, and we do so safely. We don't care what the CDN is. We want to play fair in the industry and notify everyone and let everyone know what's happening. But yeah, we often and some of these events, I mean, some of these events that we talk about, they require 4, 5, 6 different CDNs depending on the market that they're in, and they need to be able to traverse through them. So our behaviors in our scripts have to be able to do that and be able to call out that in the analytics themselves. And with the flexibility that we have, it allows us to do that.
What about the information that you can get within the Akamai CDN? You've talked about how much more you can get out of it,
Yeah,
metric-wise, platform-wise.
absolutely. And this will probably kind of lead us into some of the other stuff as well, because we recently had a multi-episode premiere event that came up, and we moved on to a new requirement, which was, hey, you know, we have this massive event coming up that people are preparing for. They've seen many seasons before, and this is the year where the season finales are coming, and they're going to be off. It's over, and I think it was a couple of years span, so the anticipation was huge. Users, the company's name was on the line, logos are on the line. They did not want to have an experience that was bad in the slightest. So this was a little different for us. And as you mentioned, being part of Akamai, I mean, it allowed us to think outside the box a little bit. Because honestly, we were probably relatively ignorant in our testing prior to coming here. And I say that with, 25 years of experience in testing some of the biggest things in the world. But yeah, we were ignorant. We came into Akamai in a very ignorant way, and the knowledge that we have gained in being here has allowed us to do something so different that we were never able to do before, and it's not black box for us anymore. We can see it end to end. We can see the complete picture, which was awesome. So we basically got a requirement that, hey, we want to cache this. We don't want to just cache it here and here. We want to cache it on every edge node that possible that the customer could possibly hit. And that's a different requirement when you're coming in from 67 locations, isn't it? I mean, that's clearly not going to get the distribution that you want. So being part of Akamai, we were able to not only pull off all the edge nodes and target in a very specific way A to B, B to C, we were able to grow it and continue to grow it based on the viewers that were going in there. So we got into episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, things were going great. All the content was there. 99.999% cache hit rate. We had validated it. It was all going great. That grew. It kept growing. And we would see more and more viewers as the streams go, and we would see more and more edge nodes being hit, and we would pull those in. I think we ended it somewhere near, I don't know, somewhere upwards of close to 20,000 different edge nodes that were pulling down the content, and we were literally serving up petabytes of data to the edge so that nobody had a bad experience. And then the last episode was coming, and their, I guess, sister company or different market,
Different region.
it would probably be the right thing to say,
Different region.
came and said, hey, our 5 events have not been like that. We're like, what do you mean? They had different content, different language. So, okay, so it's a day before the event.
Yeah.
They're coming to us. Can you do anything? Absolutely. We did the same thing we just learned on all of that episode and just applied it to their region and their specific nodes that were being hit. I believe it was Latin America markets. And by doing that, it was a night and day difference. It was exactly what we wanted to see. And that was the event went off without an issue. 0 issues, no buffering, no issues. So that's the power of testing.
All right, chaos simulations. When we did chaos simulations, it was what? Simulating a Roku player had caused issues before. What else
Yeah.
can we do for chaos?
Oh, we can. we are the leaders in chaos, I'm sure. We often, like I said, we are generic in the sense that, I mean, in my 7 years of being here, there hasn't been too much we can't do in the platform. I would say there's nothing we couldn't do in the platform today. So when we get a requirement that is, hey, inject this or do a byte range request and mimic a Roku player, as you mentioned, that caused some issues potentially from the byte range request, not necessarily because of the player, but that we were able to, adapt to this really fast. And as I said, these events, I mean, people come to us in they don't give us weeks and months to prepare. We need this now. We need this yesterday. People come when there's an issue, if they're not testing and testing often. So 80%, I know I mentioned this before, 80% of problems are designed in. So testing early, testing often, testing in production, it's a good thing.
All right, we're going to cycle back around. These are the key points that should be the takeaway. Global distribution scalability, very important, obviously. We've already discussed that. Dynamic control and adaptability is huge. We need the ability to change the test as we go, keep things moving, make the test successful end to end, not have to stop and start, restart, change a lot of things around. Just keep everything going and dynamically change.
Absolutely. Testing's expensive. Everybody knows that. But going off and having an event that is unsuccessful is millions of dollars. So when people balk at testing and everything's going right and it looks like just a tax, but when it goes wrong and someone's job's on the line because they're losing millions of dollars, they come back. The pendulum shifts. So it's very, very important.
And the last note is the team's experience is unparalleled. I mean, the team, like I said, the team's been together forever. Most of them have 15, 20 years experience, and whenever you work with them, you get a sense of comfort that they're out for your best interest. They're an augmented member of your team. They're there to make things work right for you.
Absolutely, and being part of that, I mean, we're an extension, right? We try to not only bring the experience to your team, but we have the breadth and depth in the verticals and horizontals that most don't get the exposure to because they don't get the opportunities. We are fortunate in the sense that we get to not only test one event, we test many events and various types of events and various types of situations. The platform is what allows us to do that, and our people are the glue that allows that to happen as well. I mean, as Cory mentioned, the team's average is probably 15 years of performance testing experience. As many of you might know, I mean, I've been doing this 25 years. I worked with the best engineers in the world, and I know this much. I mean, 25 years engulfed in this industry, and I'm going to graduate to a little bit more than that pretty soon. So
I think that's it. We're good for questions. Any questions?
Don't all go at once.
Yeah. Slowly roll. No? All right. If you have any questions, actually, we have a booth over there that's streaming a media presentation right now, an actual test streams that we're showing for around the world.
Yeah, we have a half a dozen different streams that are basically mimicking the dash and HLS behavior that we talked about. Stop over at the booth, talk to us if you have more in-depth questions. If you have a specific requirement, if you have an event coming up, we're here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.